we really have here rule of the bureaucracy as opposed to rule of the people, democracy. We do need to delete entire agencies as opposed to leave part of them behind.
Couldn't have said better myself. Joining us now to talk about it, Florida Congressman Byron Donalds and Katie Pavlich, editor at townhall.com, Fox News contributor. Welcome to both of you. Thanks for doing this. You know, Byron, Mr. Trump's making the policies, but I think that Elon Musk is putting in the jet fuel to make this budget cutting, deregulation, stop the permanent bureaucracy that's always moving to the left. Musk is the jet fuel. And I think without Musk, couldn't have been done. I mean, it's a what if you have here, but it's Musk that's driving this thing right now. What you think, Byron?
I think you're correct, Larry. And look, once again, President Trump has picked all of the right people in the various spots to get the agenda done. What Elon Musk is doing is what has needed to happen for decades. Somebody from the outside walking directly into these agencies, ceasing operations, and doing a top-to-bottom evaluation. If you think that there's an easier way to cut Washington, D.C. spending, I'm just here to tell you it's not the case. These agencies have to be held accountable for everything that they're doing, from top to bottom. And what makes it difficult on Congress is that Congress typically, depending on the administration, doesn't even have enough information or purview into these agencies to know where to begin or where to end. So what Elon Musk is doing is absolutely correct. You got to go in there, cease everything, examine it, then give that stuff to Congress so we can do the necessary legislative items to make sure that spending does not continue.
You know, Katie, what you got here is you got one big, beautiful billionaire conducting one big, beautiful financial audit of the United States government.
Yeah.
And he's only been at it a couple of weeks, and he's already finding massive fraud, waste, abuse, call it what you will. There's a lot of corruption going on. He's not making policy. He's just showing you why the past policies have failed. And now you've got left-wing judges and the entire Democratic Party running against it, which has got to be among the dumbest things possible.
Well, the left is starting to see the way that they function, their entire infrastructure for their activism, for their pet projects, for their political ideology, which is government is best. And the bigger the federal government, the better they think to run the country. Clearly, we've seen that is not working, that is failing. And when you look at what Elon Musk is saying, he's talking about basic things here, like people in Social Security can't be 150 years old and still receiving payments. And people keep making the argument that, well, these are just minor cuts, even though they're entire agencies. Well, when you start talking about maybe a couple thousand people who are getting payments who shouldn't, that adds up. And he's going in and doing something that Republicans and Democrats have been advocating for years. He's doing it through an efficient, technologically savvy program by hiring people who know how to look for these things. And he's simply pointing out that, look, payments are going out the door with no explanation about why. And now there's all this evidence that you're seeing in the last days of the Biden administration of them shoveling stuff out the door to try and get this money essentially to their activism and to their friends. And on the campaign show, we heard a whole lot from Democrats about how this is about saving democracy. We have to, defeat Donald Trump because democracy is on the line. To Elon's point, the bureaucracy was on the line, and now we're seeing being ripped up as Americans actually want to see.
Well, Byron, I just come back to some of these. First of all, Elon Musk and his crew of geniuses are now government employees. They're special government employees. It's a classification that's been used by Republican and Democratic administration. So they're government people, all right? They've been cleared. They've been vetted for sensitive information, okay? You got some judges saying not even the Treasury Secretary is allowed to see sensitive information in his own Treasury Department. I mean, how stupid is that? The other thing is, you know what? It's an audit and then a pause. And I want to ask you about this, Byron, because we talked to Russell Vought, the new OMB director, just confirmed OMB director. They're asking for a pause in order to review a whole bunch of funding programs that don't meet President Trump's criteria and don't meet the fraud test from Elon Musk. It's a review. They're not saying we're going to undo congressional mandates. They're saying, let us audit, pause, review, and then we'll figure out what to do with these funding programs. Now, again, I ask you, what is wrong with that? That's what any business would want to do, it seems to me.
There's nothing wrong with it, Larry, except if you are the Democratic left. Yeah. And like Katie was saying, all of your pet projects are the things that are being halted and reviewed. Let's go back 4 years. When Joe Biden came in, he halted all of Donald Trump's border procedures, border protection protocols, and they did a review. We know what they did after that. They opened up the border, and it was the most disastrous thing that happened to our country. But that being said, we are basically doing what the Democrats did and now applying it to all of government. Pause it, review it. The stuff that makes no sense, we're going to end. The things that Congress has to speak to, Congress will speak to, and then we'll have a more efficient and a more lean government. But let's be very clear. The Democrats are not upset about government being reviewed. They're upset that their pet projects are being exposed to the American people and that Donald Trump is serious about getting rid of that nonsense.
All right. Let me play some tape that goes to this budget battle between the Senate and the House. Interesting from Senator Mike Crapo. Just take a listen to this. It's not too bad in the weeds. You'll understand it. Here it comes.
Is to do a current policy option which recognizes that extending current law does not change the tax policy, does not reduce tax revenue. The process of the law is that the Budget Committee in the House and the Budget Committee in the Senate determine what the baseline is. And if they do determine what the baseline is, CBO will score it by the baseline they set.
There. Now, I'm just saying this. I'll go to Katie, even though it's a Byron thing. I want the Republicans in the House and the Senate, I mean, the senators are better on this, stand up on their hind legs and say no to the Congressional Budget Office phony baselines. As Mike Crapo, Senator Crapo, is a smart fella. First of all, it's current policy. You're just extending current policy. You shouldn't have to rescore it at all. Second of all, they create the baseline. And that baseline should show dynamic scoring, strong economic growth, and the success of the tax cuts over 7 years. Don't let CBO do it. They do it. That's what Crapo's saying. That's in the law. That's part of reconciliation. It's legal. Why aren't they doing that, Katie? And Byron, I'm going to come to you for it after Katie gets done. Go ahead, Katie.
Well, in this town, you know, the CBO, for some reason, is still relied on as an accurate scorer of these types of legislation and tax cuts. But on the messaging front, you know, Republicans have to start talking about this in terms of if the Trump tax cuts are not extended, what's the opposite of that? A tax hike. And that should help get Republicans and Democrats on board, including Democrats, who are in a tough spot to say your constituents are going to see their paychecks decrease if you don't go forward with making the Trump tax cuts permanent by the end of the year.
I know. All I'm saying is, Byron, the Budget Committee should create its own baseline. Don't be cowed or intimidated by these phony CBO baselines. I mean, heck, revenues went up $2 trillion since 2017. The CBO is completely wrong. Create your own baseline and then go on with it. Let's go. Let's not make this any harder than it needs to be.
Totally agree, Larry. I think we should do that. I agree with Senator Crapo and a lot of my colleagues. All we're doing is extending current law, but only in Washington would they say that extending current law costs you money somehow.
Right.
It is a completely ridiculous argument. It's been ridiculous the entire time. Any business owner knows the cost of goods sold, the cost of getting revenue in the door doesn't cost you stuff. You need those things in order to generate revenue. Or it's the other items that cost a business money. And so at the federal level, the issue is spending. Mandatory spending is out of control. Discretionary spending is out of control. We should look at tax policy as neutral because we're keeping current law, in some respects making that permanent. But when it comes to mandatory spending, it has to be curtailed.
But they're not doing that. Byron,
the
Budget Committee is not creating its own baseline, and it's not keeping tax policy neutral. You just said it. No one could say it better than what you just said. Tax policy is neutral. It's the same thing, and it's been a great success, and it raised all this money, and I'm completely out of time for this this segment, but I'm just saying to you, the House Budget Committee has got to create its own baseline and do just what you said. It's a neutral tax policy, and then it's chock full of budget cuts from Elon Musk and wherever. Don't make this any harder than it needs to be. Anyway, you're both terrific. Congressman Byron Donalds, thank you. Katie Pavlich, you're wonderful.
Thanks,
thank
Larry.
you very much.